Okay, now based on where we are, we can see that we should have pretty much most of our walls already done, and now would be a good time to start to work on some of the exterior details of the building. So if we look on some of our reference images here, this is kind of a nice aerial view. We can start to pick that we have a railing here. We also have another railing here, and there are a couple other details. If we look at some other reference images we have, for example, on this side, we start to see, we have an interesting retaining wall right there as well. And of course, one of the major features of this building, we have these glass panels here. So we're going to start to look on some of these details. As we have most of the massing done, we're going to look into how we can create these additional details here. All right, so we're going to start first with the railing. If we look on this image that's here, we can see that we have a very nice, interesting glass handrail that's there. And then we have another type of handrail that is here as well. So we're going to look into how we can start to create those railings. Now, the process is fairly simple. If we want to create railings, perhaps the best view to use would be the plan view. So if I go to my level 2, and you can see I've just hatched the walls so that you can kind of make out the drawing. And the idea is that we want to create our railings along this edge here. So to do that, we're going to need to go to our railing tool. So we need to go to architecture, and then we're going to head over to railings. As a matter of fact, we are going to click on the little down arrow, and then we're going to click on sketch railing path. Now once you click that, you're going to be taken to the drawing tab, and in the drawing tab, before we actually draw our railings, what I want to keep an eye out for is the type of railings that we're going to use. Now the idea is that we want to select a railing type that is somewhat similar to the railing that we can see in the image here. Right, so if I could get my drop down list, you can see where I have a glass panel railing, and this is default to REVIT, and that's perhaps the closest railing we have. So we're going to take that one, and then we're just going to modify those railings to look like the one here. So we're going to draw in the railing now, and we're still in sketch mode, so we're going to select the path for the railing, and we're going to choose OK. Now if we go on to 3D view, we see that the railing is actually on the ground floor. So we actually need to select that railing and look at the level, and obviously we want this to be on level 2. There we go. All right, so now we have our railings in, and it doesn't quite look like the railing in the image, so we need to make some modifications to this railing. Okay, so to make modifications, we're going to select the railing, and then we're going to head over to edit type. Now once in edit type, we're going to see this window pops up, and we now need to look on, let's first look on the rail structure. And in the rail structure, we can see that we have here 2 rails. And how this really works is that the rail 1 is really referring to this rail here, and the rail 2 is really referring to this bottom rail there, right? Now the top rail is a different, you edit that in a different settings. But all it's saying is that rail 1 is a particular distance from the top or bottom rail, and rail 2 is also a particular distance. The profile of it, it's a square railing, right? And then the materials are selected by the category. Now all we need to do is, well, as you can see in our reference image, you can see here that we don't have any rails. All we have is the top rail, which is there, and then we have the glass panels. So that's what we're going to do, and what we're really going to do is just delete these railings. Now the great thing about this is that there's actually a preview button here that you can hit, and you'll actually get a preview of what your changes will look like. So we need to get rid of the top rail and the bottom rail and just keep the glass, and we're also going to keep these rails, these balusters here. All right, now to do that, we're just going to delete and delete, and notice you might get an error message, and this is just simply saying that, you know, sometimes Revit references the distance between the railings, and it's just telling you that if you delete all the railings, it will now take its reference from the top or the bottom rail, which is fine. So we're going to choose yes, we want to continue. Now you may not see the update right away, so we're going to choose apply, and now you can see we only have the glass panel. Now how Revit works is a glass panel is really just another type of baluster. Mind you, it's a very wide baluster rather than a slender baluster, but Revit recognizes it as a baluster. And these settings here are for railing, so we need to actually come out of these settings. So we're going to choose OK. And next, what we need to do now is to go into the baluster placement, because remember, our glass panels are really read as balusters. So are these, and so are these. These are all balusters. Now what we want to do is we want to get rid of this little space here and this space down here. As you can see in our reference image, the glass really just takes up the entire space. Now to do that, we're going to head on into the edit for the baluster placement. And when we go in here, we see a couple of settings here, and what we want to look on is our glass panels, which is here, and we can see that it has a base offset and a top offset. And of course the base offset really refers to the base here, and the top offset really refers to the top space here. So we really just need to get rid of those real quickly. So we want to choose 0 and 0. Choose apply, and there you have it. Now we have a full railings. Now we could also get rid of the balusters here and here, because all we really have is glass. So what we're going to do is we are going to get rid of these balusters by removing our balusters here. And when we get rid of our baluster at this point, then we will no longer have these guys here. So to do that, we're simply going to select that row and choose delete, and then we can choose apply, and that's what we have. Now we're going to leave these balusters here because these are really the end posts, and we are going to want the end posts to remain. All right, so we're going to choose OK, and before we complete it, we're going to duplicate this, and we're going to call this glass panel railing M plus. There we go, and choose OK. All right, so now we have created a new railing type called glass panel railing M plus, and that's what it looks like, and this looks pretty similar here. Now we're not gonna pay attention to the distances of the panels. For now, this is good enough for this representation. Now we do have another railing type that is here, and we can actually see that railing type in some of these images. There you go. This is what it looks like, and that railing type goes around here like that. Now we're gonna just employ the same method to get this railing type around there. We can actually confirm like the height of this railing and the height of this railing to be here by looking on one of our drawings, particularly maybe one of our sections. There we go. So we can kind of get our height there, and we can just assume that it's the same height that's across there. So we can see where the height of this railing is 914, and we can just double check that here, and there we go, 914. So that is good to go. All right, so now we need to get in this railing, and we're going to repeat the same method by going to level 1, preferably level 2. There we go. And we know that the railing goes all the way around here. So all we need to do is go back to architecture and head over to railings, and in railings we're going to choose sketch. Now this time what we're going to use is actually the pick lines tool, and we're going to pick the edges of these lines here. So let's pick we can actually, let's do an offset. These walls here are 200, so let's offset it by 100, so that way we can pick the center lines. There we go. And for our last line here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put a line, put one there. Oops. There we go. Okay, let's there we go. And that's nicely trimmed. And of course, we're going to carry this down because this is where you would enter the stairs from. All right. Now that that is done, we are gonna say OK, and it must be a single. If you get this error message, it's perhaps because there are breaks in the line. So we're gonna choose continue and look for those breaks. Also, while we're here, we want to ensure that we are drawing this on the correct level. So we want to ensure that our level is set to level 2. And we want to also choose a railing style that is similar to what we're trying to achieve here. So in this case, we can see that's our railing style there. So perhaps the closest railing style would be maybe handrail pipe will do. All right, now we need to check to make sure that all our points are connected, because we were getting an error message, and I think this is where we have the overlap here. So if I pull this down, you can see where there was an overlap. So I'm going to use the trim extend tool and just join those together. Let's see if everything goes okay now. Now we still have another overlap, so we're going to search for that. either we have an overlap or some of the lines are not meeting 100%. That's usually the reason. And I think here we have the other overlap here. So I'm going to pull that down and let's just use trim and extend. There we go. All right, we got one more overlap. All right, now we hit OK and our railing should be drawn. So let's look at that in 3D. And that's what we have there. We can see we have our railing there. Now, of course, this railing doesn't quite look like this railing. So we need to now go in and modify this. So as usual, we're going to click on Edit Type for this railing. Make sure that you have the railing selected. And then, well, first let us create our new railing. So we're going to choose duplicate, and what that's going to do is create a copy of this, and we're going to call this M plus interior, no, M plus balcony rails. All right. Of course, we can see our preview is over here. So we're going to do the same thing, and definitely we don't need so much rails. So we are actually going to just remove all of these rails. Choose apply. There we go. Then we're going to go into baluster placements, and in this case we know that we have quite a few balusters. So what we're going to do is change the distances of the balusters, and we're going to change that to maybe about maybe 150 millimeters. Let's choose apply. All right, we're getting there. The next thing is that these balusters are round, and we can see here where these are like more flat panel balusters. So we need to look into the baluster types. Now, if you take a look on this side, we can see that we have our start posts, corner posts, and end posts, and all of them are round, and we need to change that. So what we're going to do is change it from the round to let's use baluster square. Let's use steel flat. So we're going to change all of these to baluster steel flat. Choose OK. And okay, that's good. Let's choose apply. Okay, great stuff. Now we also need to change the baluster family, that's here, and that will be changed from the round to the steel flat. Let's choose apply, and there we go. Now this is looking quite similar. Now we do need to remove this guardrail here, so we're going to do that in just a bit. So let's choose OK, and what I want to do now is this guardrail here, we need to uncheck this, which is saying to use a guardrail. All right, good stuff. So we're going to uncheck that and choose apply, and that's actually the wrong one. No, not the top rail. It's actually, if you scroll down a little bit more, you will see where you have the handrail. This is really a handrail, not the top rail. This is actually the top rail here. So we should indeed choose none. And there we have it. Now we don't have a top rail. We don't have a handrail. the top rail, we could also change our top rail to be perhaps more of a square, or yeah, let's work with one of these. It's a bit thick, so let's try a thinner profile. I think that will work. Yeah, let's leave it at that. And if you do in fact get this error message here and you're not seeing any balusters, it is more than likely because the baluster placement options, as you can see here, our top offset and the base offset is set to 0, but we know that the height of our baluster is actually 914. So let's put that in. That must have changed when we accidentally deleted the top rail. So we just needed to go back and make sure that our top rail has an actual dimension. Choose OK. And there we go. That is looking quite similar to what we have there. Now there is one more railing to do, and that is the railing that's going up these stairs here. And if you use these reference images, you can see what that railing looks like here. So that is that railing there that is supposed to go along the stairs. So I'm going to leave you guys to now create that railing using the same kind of method that we used to create these two railings here. So try out those methods to create this railing. What I will say, the only thing that is different about these railings are when it comes to the stairs here and here. Going to the railing tool, we would now have to select place on stair, and when you click the stair, that is how you get the railing there. So that is the main difference that we would have to contend with. Now if I just remove those railings, I want to highlight an important point here that that might give some person some trouble. Now if you notice these stairs here, how I've drawn these stairs is that I've drawn a stairs here, and I've drawn a floor and then another flight upstairs. Now this can work, however this is not the recommended way to do the stairs. You want to try to do one flight of stairs in cases where you need to have railings. So for example, if I try to put railings here, what you will notice happening is that when I go to architecture and go to railings and go to place on stair, I'm not able to select this element here. I can only select these two elements here. So I'm left with this gap here, which you could put a regular railing, but what's going to happen is it's going to be mismatched. You're going to end up with a railing like that, and you're going to end up with this weird space here. So the best way to deal with that is if you find that you're in this situation, it's much easier to just actually delete these stairs and draw one straight stair. So I'm going to simulate that problem. So I'm going to delete these stairs here, and I'm going to leave the landing here just as a reference point. And this is for those of you who might have created the stairs like this. All right, so I need to recreate the stairs. So I'm going to go to the plan view, and I'm going to go to architecture and go to stair. And I'm going to make sure that I'm creating a straight stair. Now I could sketch a stair from scratch, but because the stair is straight, there's no need to sketch a straight stair. We can actually just use the defaults here. I'm going to check my levels. So what I'm going to do is make sure that I'm moving from level 1 up to level 2. I could also check the type of stair. I can always change that later, so there's no problem there. And I can also choose where I'm going to have my location line. So I might choose to have my location line on the left. All right, so now I'm going to start drawing the stair, and I'm going to start a little bit earlier, maybe like about here. And I think I need to change the line to the right. There we go. And I'm going to go about here, and then click again to create a landing, then click again to continue the stairs, and I'm going to click beyond the point here, and notice that it says 14 risers created, 0 remaining. I'm going to click once more, and the stairs will be created there. All right, so now this message is only saying based on the fact that the stairs is intersecting the wall there. So what we're going to do is we're going to adjust the width of this stairs real quickly. There we go. And with that said, we have quickly recreated our stair. Now I could just click OK here and just click this entire stair and kind of move it down a little bit so that it's right about there, which is good enough. Now if I go to my 3D view, you will see that it gave me railings by default, which is okay. I can just remove this landing that is here, and notice it gave me a different type of landing that is also here. Now additionally, if you did your stairs like this from the get-go, that would be great, but just in case some of us might have had to redo our stairs, then you might notice that it's not lining up with the terrain as you had it. Now there are some tweaks that you can do so that you don't have to go forth and edit your terrain again. And usually these settings, you click on the stair, and usually you can play around with the top offset, the number of risers, and the tread depth to try and kind of nudge the stairs into what you want to do. So for example, instead of 304, we could try a value of maybe 250, and you might get some messages, some warning messages. So for example, you can see now that the stair is a bit short because we have shortened every tread to 250 millimeters. So we're going to have to push that back. So I'm just nudging that with my arrow keys, as you can see. And I think that just about did it. Maybe just to come forward just a little bit, and maybe try this at 260, and set it back a little bit, and pretty much we're back where we started. So that is making sure that we have one straight flight of stairs. Now all we need to do now is to modify this stair, these railings again. So I can click on this railing, go to edit type, and I can again duplicate this and call this M plus entrance rails. And I'm going to do the same thing again. If I look in my structure, of course I don't need all of these rails. I'm going to delete all of them because, as you can see, the design of the rails here are really super simple. So I'm going to choose OK. So now I don't have any rails, and I also do not need the handrail, so I'm going to just switch that to none. And let's choose apply and see what that looks like. Let's choose OK. And that's about it. That can do it. And we're going to choose my other rail over here, and we're actually going to choose M plus railing. That's like that. And oh, not the glass railing, but the entrance rails, like that. There we go. And in terms of this other rail here, what we can actually do is further go ahead and modify this, and we can duplicate this again, and we can call it rails, and we can say no balusters. I'm just going to put BAL, and this time I go into balusters, and I'm going to say no regular balusters, and no start, no corner, and no end post. Choose OK and OK. And there we have it. Now we only have the rails, as you can see we have here. All right. Okay, great. So we pretty much have all our balconies, all our railings in. Now we're going to look at some more details as we go here. And we're also going to look at the retaining wall that we should have right here. Now if we look on our images, we can see that we have a retaining wall that we can kind of see here. Here it is. We can see that retaining wall right here being represented here. Or there's actually a drawing that we can use. Here we go. We can see that retaining wall there, and that is pretty much what is happening in this area here. So we would need to now put in this wall that would be about right there, which is really that wall. All right. Now to get this wall in, it's going to take a little bit of it's going to take a new feature of modeling, and we're going to look on that in just a sec. We can use our plans to get the length of this. There we go. So we can use our plans to get the rough length of this wall here, so we can get the positioning of this wall correctly. So between these two drawings, we're able to construct what this wall looks like. Now it's kind of interesting because notice this line here is slant, and this line here is also slant, but they slant at different degrees. So the first thing we do to if we want to create this retaining wall, I'm going to leave that right there, is the concept is we're going to draw one end of our wall like that, and then we're going to extrude the wall to another end like that. And after we extrude this, then we're going to angle it at a particular angle so that we can get the wall at the correct angle like that. So that is going to be our plan of action. So in order to create that first extrusion, remember we're going to create we need to create a flat surface like that in order to extrude it that way. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go over to architecture here, and in order to draw on this wall surface here, we need to change our working plane. So we're going to go to work plane and go to set, and then we're going to say pick a work plane, because we want to actually pick this wall as our work plane. So we're going to pick that, then choose OK. We kind of hover over this wall, there we go, and click, and now our work plane is set. But just to be sure, we want to show our work plane so that we can know that indeed we are drawing on this part of the wall there. All right, now we can actually hide this piece of land and the building pad. It might be getting in the way. All right, now what we want to do now is create a custom modeling place element, and we're going to choose a wall category for this element. So remember the plan, we need to really just construct a part of the wall like that, and then we just need to extrude that wall to create that retaining wall. So we're gonna choose OK, and we're gonna call this retaining wall. Now the interesting thing is that we are not going to use an extrusion for this. Instead, we are going to actually use a swept blend. And the reason for that is this wall is not an exact extrusion. If you look at it closely, you can see that the wall is actually getting smaller and the shape is actually changing throughout the length of the wall. So what we need to do is we're going to choose swept blend, and how this really works is we need to create shape 1. So let's say that our shape 1 is here, and that's good. Then we need to create a shape 2, which would perhaps be a little smaller, and then we have to choose a path by which they will extrude. So then we'll connect them this way, and then Revit will automatically connect all the corners together and create our shape. So that's essentially what we're going to do. We need to choose the path, choose profile 1, which is the first shape, and then we need to choose profile 2, which is going to be the second shape. After we do that, then we just click the green tick, and as long as our model is created correctly, we should get our shape. All right, great. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to sketch path. Now when we go to sketch path, we need to actually set our working plane. So if we take a look on this, we have to remember that our path that we're going to be sketching is going to be perpendicular to this working plane. So that's the direction we're going. Because remember, we're going to actually create a shape like this, and then we're going to create a shape like that. So we actually need to change our working plane first in order to sketch this path. So we are gonna, let's change our working plane to level 1. There we go. So now our working plane is gonna be pretty much flat. Let me show you the level. So that is our working plane there. And we're going to choose our path. So we're going to draw the path. So we're going to just arbitrarily draw our path. We can change it later. So I'm just going to draw a straight line. And you can see how this is kind of turning out. You can see these two rectangles here, and these rectangles, these green rectangles here, represents our first shape, and then this is our second shape. So this is what Revit is expecting us to do. So After we draw the path, then we're going to have to choose create the two shapes. All right, so now that we've created our path, we're going to choose OK. And now we need to create profile 1. And remember, profile 1 should really be the first part of the retaining wall. And then profile 2 will be the second edge of the retaining wall. And REVIT should connect all of these edges for us just fine. All right, so we're going to go to profile 1 and we're going to create profile 1. Now we're going to use the same revise it method. So when we choose profile 1, we need to select edit profile. There we go. Now we're going to be drawing profile 1, and profile 1 is this area here, which is flat against the wall. So if we look at our drawing here, we can see that profile 1 would be equivalent to that shape. So we have the measurement here, we have this measurement here, and we have the angle, which is here. So we're going to use that to draw the profile 1. So so the base is 1088, and then we go up by 3,420. There we go. And then now what we're going to do is draw the angle, which is, well, the angle is actually on the opposite side. So I'm going to draw an arbitrary angle, and then I'm going to revise it. So I'm going to go to annotate and use my angle tool here. And there we go. And now all I need to do is to click this line and change this to 103.72. There we go. All right. Now, pretty much, I just need to join these two lines. And there we go. We have our first profile, which is really equal to here, and we can OK our first profile. Now we need to do our second profile, and our second profile is actually equal to here. So in order to do that, we're gonna do the same thing, choose edit profile, and we're gonna click draw. And now okay, you want to ensure that you select the second profile, and then we're going to choose edit type. Now once you do that, what you will notice is that this becomes highlighted because we have already drew this profile in the background. All right, so now we're going to draw this profile here. Actually, to ensure things are actually lined up, I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to go back into my first profile, and it's a good idea to actually align this. So I'm going to select everything here, and I'm going to move this, and I'm going to put this corner right on this point there, so I can use that point as a reference point so that I know my shapes are aligned. Okay, so we're gonna choose OK. All right, now we can go back to profile 2, and now I can start to draw this shape from here. So I can see I have the measurements for this shape here and here, and I have the angle here. Okay, so let's plug those shapes in, those numbers in. So this is 400. I'm going to put in an arbitrary angle. We're going to edit that later. The height is 1100. There we go. And we're going to just leave that line there. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to go over to annotate and go to angle, so I can actually put in this angle here. There we go. And then I'm going to change this line here to 100.30. And I'm going to trim these lines up. There we go. And then I'm going to choose OK. So now we can see where we have our first profile, which is linked to here, and our second profile, or rather that's the first profile, and that is linked to there. So now we just need to choose OK, and notice Revit has created this shape for us, which is all great. Now, of course, when we look on this in plan, we can see that this is actually straight, and even some of it is inside the wall here. Well, actually, no, it's an overhang. But when you look at the plan here, you can see that this is actually at an angle. So we need to actually incorporate that angle now. So in order to do that, we need to let's just use a detail line. Oh, we need to finish this model by clicking OK. All right, so we can use a detail line, and we can go to annotate and go to angle, and we can select this angle here, and we can now plug this in, which is 112.20. There we go. So now it is actually at the correct angle. We can now get some dimensions in. So by checking this here, we can see that we have a dimension that we can use between the edge here and the edge of the entrance to the lower floor. So if we look on our level 1, there we go, we can use this dimension here, which would equate to between this distance and that point there. And we can see where this is 4482. So I'm going to actually select this point here, and there we go. So we can see that this point is actually all the way down here. And if we look on that on 3D, we can see that we now have this in place. All right, so this is great. So we can actually use our Unhide tool now, which we can find down here. Sorry, not that tool, that's the render tool. Our Unhide tool, which is that. And we can unhide this terrain by selecting it and choose Unhide Element, and then we can turn it off. All right, so now that we have this point here, we also need to unhide our building pad. So now we can actually adjust our building pad to match what we have here. So to do this, I would use a top view actually. And let's see here. Yes, we can use this top view, and you can see that the terrain is actually hidden. So I'm going to select the topography, and I'm going to go over to I need to unhide the category first, so let's unhide that. There we go. All right. What we actually need to do is we need to select the building pad. Let's see if we can grab that. So I think if I switch to a 3D view, I can see it better. And what I want to do is I probably have to tab into it, but I need to select the building pad. You can know when you see the building pad name there. And then I need to go to edit boundaries. So now that I have that, I can go to my top view, and maybe let's go to level 1. There we go. And let's look at it in wireframe. Good. And the idea is that we want to move this building pad now to represent the retaining wall right there. And we're going to choose OK. Oh, we need to fix that up. There we go. And we're going to pull this out here like that. Choose OK. Oh, we need to trim this up. All right. So if we look on that in 3D, we can see where we now have our retaining wall that fixes this here. Now, there is one more thing that we do need to fix, and that is the length of this retaining wall. I need to go back to edit in place, and I need to select this and go back to edit sweep. And I need to go, what I need to do is actually, I need to change the length of this here. Now, we can go to edit path, but before we actually change this, if you notice the length of the path that we see here, we actually did not input that. So if I go over here, I will see, that's the length it's supposed to be, 8,341. So I want to change that. There we go. Let me double check that. So I want to choose this guy here. Right. 8,341. And I think both points move, so I'm going to select back these 2 points. And I'm going to move that back to, I think I better do it from a top view. There we go. This is a much better view. So I can move this point back to here where it should be, and there we go. So that's something that I should have done from the get-go, which is to edit the path. There we go, and I'm going to choose OK. All right, so now that I look in 3D, now this should be the correct length, which is what you're seeing here. All right, so that is how we get this retaining wall, and this is a very custom fit retaining wall. So that is how we'll get that wall in. Now from a plan view, you might see that it's not quite, this retaining wall is supposed to actually be inside this wall here. So even if I nudge it back into this wall, and I'm actually using the arrow keys to kind of nudge it back in there. I can use my my views. Okay, to see how that is working out. All right, that's great. Okay, now what I want to do is make sure that this is lined up properly. So let's check back. This measurement should be 4482, so we're going to put that back. Right, that's the distance that that wall should be. And remember, we got that distance from here, so we need to ensure that this wall is in the right location. All right, then we also had the length of this wall. We could use this plan here, and we see the length was 8341, and we actually did make that length correct. So that length is from actually the center of this wall. So I'll move this. Right, here we go. Actually, no, it was from this corner. Move that up to here. There we go. So this is actually the correct length of this wall that's there. Now what we can do is we can really go back here and go back into edit sweep blend, and I can go back into sketch path, and I can actually carry this path down a bit like that, so that I have it intersected in the wall. Now, of course, you notice that you have a little part that's kind of sticking out like that. And how we get rid of this is we have to use a, we have to subtract this shape from here. Now, a quick way we can do that is to click on the wall and go to edit in place. And this time we can use a void form, which is located here. So you can see the void form. And what we can do with the void form is cut this, cut off this section here. Now, in order to do that, what we need to do is we're going to click void forms, and we're going to choose what type of void we want to cut this. So we're just going to choose a regular extrusion. And what we're going to do is just draw a random box, because remember, the idea is that whatever is intersecting this box, like this area here, will now be removed. So let's look at that in 3D before we OK it. So you can see that's where the box is there, and we're going to choose OK. We're going to change the height of this, because remember, what we want to do is have this box slice this section here that is sticking out there. Okay, now once we have that selected, then we need to go to the cut button here and choose what we want the box to cut with, which is actually this object. So we choose that and press enter, and now it is actually cut. So if we look on that in plan, we can see that this area is nicely cut like that, and we're going to choose OK. Now, once you choose OK, you might get a message that says some of your dimensions has to be deleted. That's fine. You just need to delete that dimension. All right. And that is it. So now we have this. We just need to go back and edit this this building pad right here. So I'm just going to use tab to get into the building pad, which there it is. I go to edit boundary and I'll do that from my plan view, and I'll pull this back just a tad like that. All right, so now this entrance is looking like what it should. Okay, so those are some exterior details that we started to add. Now the last thing that we need to add now is actually the panels, which is kind of the heartbeat of this project, which you can see these panels that are here, which are represented, which is representing what you see in the images here. All right, now ideally the panel in reality is actually fixed to the wall. So if you look at this detail view here, you can see that the panel itself, which is here, is actually 20 millimeters, and there's a small space which should house the mounts for the panels, and then there's the wall. So this gives a rough idea of what we need to achieve. Now pretty much that covers most of the exterior walls, like up here and here and on the other side of here. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to focus on one particular wall, which is here, and then you guys just use the same method to apply to these other areas. All right, now to get going, what we're going to do is actually use a curtain wall. And a curtain wall is really just another type of wall, but it's a non-load bearing wall. Essentially, a curtain wall is usually hung, but in our case we are going to use the curtain wall to represent the panels in Revit. So to do that, we're going to head over to architecture, then we're going to head over to walls, and what we're going to do next is we're going to change our wall type and choose curtain wall. Now by default, these three are usually there, and we're going to start from a blank curtain wall. So we're going to choose curtain wall 1, and what we can do is actually we can do this from a plan view. So let's do it from level 2. All right, so we're going to choose curtain wall 1, and what we're going to do is we're going to use the pick lines feature, and we're basically going to pick the edge of our wall here. Now what I'm going to do for our purpose, I am going to turn off this override that I have here. Well, first let's hide the land. So we're going to hide the land here. There we go. And then I'm going to turn off the override. So I'm going to override the category, and I'm going to say do not hatch the walls. I'm going to put that back to default. So now you can actually see the thickness of the walls. Okay. Now, okay, so I'm going to go to walls and choose curtain wall. There we go. And then I'm going to use the pick line tool, and what I'm going to do is just pick the edges of this wall here. That's one edge. All right, Now notice when you create the curtain wall at first, it does this. It does a couple weird things. Now, as you can see, the curtain wall is actually on the inside of the wall. And then when it does the corner, it does this weird angular thing. Okay, so to solve the first problem, we just need to find the flip button to flip the curtain wall on the outside. Like that. And like that. So that takes care of that. However, we still have the issue of this angle that's right here. And then, you might notice that the curtain wall doesn't take angles so nicely. So let's look on that in 3D, see what it looks like. And we can see the walls here. We can set the heights of them, no problem. But we do have this weird angle here. We can actually see where the curtain wall actually curves, but yet still the panel is totally not going along with the curve. Now, as it relates to the heights, we can always change that. We can actually use the align tool to modify. Go to the align tool, and we can align the top and the bottom. And the top here. Top. Oops. All right. So that takes care of that. However, we still need to solve this problem. Now, an easy way to solve this problem is actually by, I would say, kind of outsmarting REVIT. Now, in reality, REVIT provides angular curtain walls because usually in reality, to get curved glass or curved curtain walls, you would really create that by creating a series of corners. So that is what REVIT is expecting. So, for example, if I were to use a curtain wall again to create a curve, REVIT is expecting you to, take slight angles to create an actual curve like that. However, what we're going to do is, it is possible to have a glass that is curved. As a matter of fact, if we look on our drawings here and the reference photos, we can see clearly that this glass is indeed curved. You can see it here. So this glass is actually curved, and it is not actual corners like a polygon. So we would need to accurately represent that here. And in order to do that, we have to create a little trick for REVIT. Now, in order to do this, I'm going to do this in 3D so you can see what's actually been done. We are going to create a particular wall and then apply that wall to override this curtain wall. So what do I mean by that? Well, I'm in this little area here. I'm going to demonstrate. So what I'm going to draw here is a normal wall. So I'm going to select a generic 6-inch wall. I'm going to draw a regular wall like that. And this is what that wall looks like. Now what we're going to do is turn this into glass, and then we're going to apply this glass to replace this curtain wall, because REVIT doesn't want to curve curtain walls, but REVIT will indeed curve walls. As you can see here, these walls are curved because you can have curved wall in reality and it's pretty normal. So the idea is that we are going to trick REVIT into thinking that this glass is really a wall. So in order to do that, I'm going to select this wall here. And then I'm going to go into edit type. Now I'm going to duplicate this and I'm going to call this M plus glass, just to give it a different name. And of course, I'm going to change the structure of this so-called wall. So when I change the structure, I'm going to say, let's make the structure of the wall really glass. So I'm going to change the material by clicking these three dots here. And I'm going to search for glass. I'll choose glass clear glazing. And of course, I'm going to change the thickness. I'm going to change that to 20 millimeters. Then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to insert another layer. And I'm going to actually change this layer to air to represent this 5 millimeter space that we have here between the wall and the glass. So I'm going to change that to 5. All right. And then I'm going to choose OK. And I'm going to choose OK again. Now what you see here is really a type of wall that we have made glass. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select my curtain wall. I'm going to go to edit type. And then I'm going to change my curtain wall panel from none to the wall that I just created, which is M plus glass, which is that. And choose OK. All right. All right. So now I've actually changed that to that. There we go. So that's the M plus glass right there. And notice how this is now curved. Now, the thing is, it's actually inside the wall, so we need to actually change that. And how we're going to change that is, let's see if we can select this. There we go. And I'm going to change it to exterior. Let's see. Now let's change it to interior, finished face. And there we go. Now it comes out on the other side. I'm going to do the same thing for this. And what I'm doing here is actually selecting the panel, not the curtain wall. All right. If I click the curtain wall, it's going to say curtain wall, but I'm actually selecting the panel and then changing it, the justification. Now remember that this is really just a wall, but we are really letting Revit think that it is glass, or letting Revit think that it is a wall, but it's really glass. All right, so that takes care of having our outer layer there. There we go. Okie doke. All right, so now that we have that done, and we have that there, you want to double check to ensure that you have selected glass. So you want to get that, ensure that you have selected the glass there. Okay, doesn't matter which glass you choose actually, as long as it's there. So if I go to my shaded view, we need to have the wall, which we can see clearly here. And then we can see that the glass is on the outside of that wall. All right. So now that we have that done, the next thing is to create those divisions for the panels. And to do that, we just need to go over to architecture and we need to create a curtain wall grid. Curtain wall grid. So we pick that. And what this is essentially doing is splitting these into panels. Now we could we can actually split these evenly if we wish. Now when you use the curtain grid feature, you can actually create these spaces manually, which is great, but it might take a little time. So you can create these horizontal spaces and it might not be so even. Now you can get in and change the dimensions to make them even, but I'm going to undo that. Perhaps a much shorter way would be to select the curtain wall, right? And by the way, one thing that we forgot to do is to create our own curtain wall. So I'm going to duplicate this and call this M plus panels. There we go. So that way we have, you know, in case later on we want to make different curtain walls. So I'm going to change this to M plus panels. And just like what we did with our walls, we have our own, we have, anytime we create a new custom family, we create a new name. All right, so now I'm going to choose the M plus panels, go to edit type, and then I'm going to look on the vertical grid and horizontal grid. And I can just actually say minimum spacing. It can be maximum as well, but I'm going to choose minimum. And I'm going to put in, this is the default. I'm going to just leave it. And what it's going to do is divide up all the curtain walls using a minimum spacing of 1,500. Pick that. And there we go. Now, in some cases, it does actually do it, but the division is actually there, but sometimes because of graphics, we're not really seeing it. If I actually click there, you can actually see that the divisions are indeed there. And if we go to wireframe, we can see that those divisions are there. But sometimes when you look at it in the shaded views, we're not quite seeing them there. Now, additionally, we could go in and still add more points by clicking on the curtain wall and go to curtain wall grid, and we can actually add in additional spaces here. All right. So if you see the spaces disappear, don't be alarmed. It's just really a graphical glitch that might happen because of the tiny spaces between. Now we can go in and change the options here in case that this isn't big enough. And we can change this to like 800. Choose apply, and maybe we don't want the horizontal grid. Let's keep that at 1,200, and let's keep this at about 1,000. All right, there we go. That looks a bit better. So that's how we get the panels in. Now, in some cases, you might have to shape the panels a certain way. So for example, just as an example, I could click on this here, and I could go to edit profile, and I could actually change the profile of these panels here. So now when I choose OK, it cuts it like that. Not that you'd want to do that here, but I pointed that out because there is, if you look at the reference images, you can see that this area here has the panel sliced at an angle, so you might have to use that to get that area done. All right, so that is pretty much it. We looked on creating railings, and we actually created different types of railings. We looked at ways to correct a stair in case you used a different method to create a stair and you needed to get the railing. We also looked at creating custom objects. In this case, we created this custom retaining wall, and then we created these panels using the curtain wall, and we got the curtain walls to curve using a little trick to trick REVIT that into using a wall for the curtain walls. So continue to expand on the panels here for the other areas to get it complete, and the next time around we'll begin to look at other external elements like the doors and maybe some elements on the roof. And then after that, we will go into the interior details, and that should conclude our module.